Bleacher Report gives the New York Knicks a 3-year window to win an NBA championship, and Carmelo Anthony finally gets the respect that he deserves. All that and much more on the Knicks Digest. What's up, guys? It's your boy Dariel once again. It's been a little bit of a minute, but your boy's been busy. Let's get right into today's video. So Bleacher Report came out with an article talking about every NBA team's 3-year window to win an NBA championship. And if we take a look at the list, number 1, the Oklahoma City Thunder, Boston Celtics, Denver Nuggets, Philadelphia 76ers, Dallas Mavericks, Minnesota Timberwolves, Cleveland Cavaliers, and then at number 8, we got the New York Knicks. To have the Cleveland Cavaliers ranked ahead of the New York Knicks, they're being led by Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, time and time again, I keep saying it. What has he done as far as being the main player, the number 1 option on his team? With the Utah Jazz, they were able to get past the first round one of his seasons. With the Cleveland Cavaliers, they got smacked in the first round, losing in 5 games where the Cleveland Cavaliers were actually favored in that series. And then last season, they were able to get by the Orlando Magic, but in a 7-game series, the first time the Orlando Magic has been to the NBA playoffs, with Paolo Banchero being the main player, the Wagner brothers, Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, and all these players are puppies. They are puppies in the playoffs. This is their first time having some playoff experience, playoff minutes, playoff energy. And the Cleveland Cavaliers, it took them 7 games, led by Donovan Mitchell, to get past the Orlando Magic. And then they end up getting smacked in the second round, I believe losing in 5 games. Now, you can make the excuse that Donovan Mitchell was injured, so that's probably going to really hurt them. But in all honesty, I think every hooper, every NBA analyst, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they had no chance against the Boston Celtics. If anything, I was surprised that they even got 1 game. There's also Evan Mobley, who we still have to see Evan Mobley take leaps and bounds in his NBA career as far as his development, as far as a mid-range jump shot, as far as just being the best player on the team. Evan Mobley, in my opinion, has the potential to be the best player on his team, but I feel like he's a little bit behind the 8 ball as far as his advancement, as far as his progression in his career. Going back to the list, now before the Cleveland Cavaliers, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm not mad at that because of Anthony Edwards. I think it's between Anthony Edwards, Zion Williamson, and John Morant as far as the faces of the league. That's a big conversation. Jason Tatum is also in that conversation as well. But Minnesota Timberwolves being to the Western Conference Finals, first time, finally get the experience, specifically for Anthony Edwards. And on top of that, he's coming off the Olympic experience. So we're probably going to see Anthony Edwards just make another leap in his career, which is going to look crazy. And it might be MVP this year. Who knows? Ahead of the Minnesota Timberwolves, we got the Dallas Mavericks, of course, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. They just went to the NBA Finals this past season, so I'm not mad at them for being at number 5. At number 4, we got the Philadelphia 76ers. The Philadelphia 76ers being ranked ahead of the New York Knicks, I just don't understand it, man. I feel like all of these outlets, Bleacher Report or ESPN for that fact, when they're ranking teams, when they're ranking individual players, it's like you gotta take everything into account. And with the Philadelphia 76ers, you got to take the number 1 option, the best player, into consideration. Joel Embiid just has not been able to stay healthy. So as far as within the next 3 years, I mean, Joel Embiid has had an injury going into the playoffs for the last 3-4 seasons. And we've seen what his output has been. We've seen how far he's been able to lead the Philadelphia 76ers. It has not been past the second round. So now you're counting on Joel Embiid for the next 3 years to be healthy. Now, in my opinion, I think the Philadelphia 76ers, if it's not them, I think they might have had the best offseason out of every NBA team. Picking up a Paul George, re-signing Kelly Oubre, re-signing Kyle Lowry, Tyrese Maxey, extending his rookie extension. As far as a big 3, if Joel Embiid is able to stay healthy, that big 3 is serious, even though I have my questions regarding Paul George. But Joel Embiid just has not proven to be healthy, man. So now we're going to be dependent on Joel Embiid for the next 3 years being healthy. I don't see it, and I don't know how in the hell they were able to rank it that high in Bleacher Report's ranking. Ahead of the Philadelphia 76ers, you got the Denver Nuggets at number 3. Obviously, Jokic, in my opinion, is the best player in the league, so I agree with that. The Boston Celtics at number 2, and it's crazy what's been going on with the Boston Celtics this past summer. Jason Tatum, with the amount of minutes that he played in the Olympics, Jaylen Brown not being considered when Kawhi Leonard dropped out, him not even being considered to replace Kawhi Leonard, and they went straight to Derek White. That's kind of crazy. I don't know. I just feel like there's something being done behind the scenes as far as trying to break up this Boston so-called dynasty that it could be. The Boston Celtics, it could be a dynasty. I could see them winning back-to-back, depending on the matchups in the finals. I don't expect them to come out of the East. I 100% expect them to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's not a question. But coming out of the East, it might be a little tricky. Like I just said, Joel Embiid, this could be the season where he's finally going to be able to play a full season where he's healthy. And of course, the New York Knicks picking up Mikal Bridges, re-signing OG Anunoby, depending on what we do at the big man spot. Maybe the trade deadline. Maybe we pick up Walker Kessler or Clint Capella. Depending on what we do between Mitchell Robinson and the backup big, we got to see what happens. But it's going to be very interesting for the Boston Celtics this upcoming season. The Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm not mad at that, man. The Oklahoma City Thunder being led by SGA. SGA is he's probably, at this point, maybe one of the most slept on players in the league, finishing at number 2 in the MVP voting last year, behind Jokic, of course. I like the OKC team, man, especially picking up Alex Caruso and getting rid of Josh Giddey. What Alex Caruso is going to be able to bring to the team was shooting. Alex Caruso, yeah, he's not a lethal three-point shooter or a mid-range shooter, but you can actually depend on him to hit those shots. So whenever Josh Giddey was in the game and it was a swing situation, and Josh Giddey had it in the corner or anywhere on the court, the defense was kind of like egging him on to shoot. With Alex Caruso, you absolutely cannot do that. Alex Caruso has a respectable mid-range jumper. He also has a respectable three-point shot. And Alex Caruso is in a conversation of being a top 5 perimeter defender in the league. So you add Alex Caruso to the talent pool that the OKC Thunder already have. They got Lou Dort, the Dorset Chamber, who's another lockdown defender. You got SGA, like I talked about. You got Chet Holmgren. With the addition of Isaiah Hartenstein, who can help Chet Holmgren, and I feel like Chet's game is a natural 4. I don't think he's a natural 5. But seeing Chet's skill set, being able to put the ball on the floor for his size with a three-point shot, I feel like his game would benefit so much if he'd be able to slide over to the 4 spot. That way he wouldn't be able to have to bang against the 5s night in, night out. Victor Wembanyama, Anthony Davis, Nikola Jokic, Rudy Gobert. I feel like his game is going to blossom. But some of these teams being ranked ahead of the New York Knicks, I'm not mad at. OKC Thunder, I'm not mad at. Boston Celtics, I'm not mad at. Denver Nuggets, I'm not mad at. Dallas Mavericks, I'm not mad at. Minnesota Timberwolves, I'm not mad at. But Cleveland Cavaliers and the 76ers being ranked ahead of the Knicks for the next 3 years, that's kind of crazy to me. The Knicks, like I said earlier, re-signing OG Anunoby, adding Mikal Bridges being added to the already chemistry that's already been built for the Villanova boys, Dante Josh and Jalen Brunson. And then we got Julius Randle coming back from his season-ending shoulder injury last season. Like, this season could be absolutely magical. And in my opinion, if I'm sticking to the terms of Bleacher Report, within the next 3 years, if everybody's healthy, for the next 3 seasons, I expect the New York Knicks to make the finals at least one time. I'm putting it on wax. The New York Knicks need to make the NBA Finals at least one time. If everybody's healthy, barring injury. No Julius Randle injuries, no Jalen Brunson, no OG, especially no injuries in the playoffs. We can't have another playoffs like last season where everybody was just skeletons out there and we didn't have anybody out there. If we're able to have everybody healthy, we need to make the NBA Finals at least once in the next 3 seasons. Now, as far as this upcoming season, actually, you know what? Not even this upcoming season. I feel like just moving forward with the team that we have, we need to make the Eastern Conference Finals. Beginning next season, it has to be Eastern Conference Finals or bust. We can't put the type of talent, we can't put the type of team together that we have and not make the Eastern Conference Finals. And like I said a little bit earlier, if we're able to make a decent splash around the trade deadline time period, where we're able to get a solidified big to back up Mitchell Robinson, or maybe even ship out Mitchell Robinson, because Mitchell Robinson is a little bit of an injury-prone player. I'm sorry to say that. Big Mitch, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, bro. But we need to see you healthy for a full season. We haven't seen it in quite some time. So if we're able to get a solidified, quality backup big to back up Mitch, or maybe even ship out Mitch and get a quality big in return, that 5 spot, that's the spot where we really got to focus on for this season. Hopefully the Knicks, Worldwide West, and Leon Rose, hopefully they have something up their sleeve. Hopefully they know of something. But as far as this article, Bleacher Report, for the most part, they got it right. A couple teams where I'm in disagreement with, but Bleacher Report, for the most part, they got it right. Okay, now, shifting gears, I want to talk about a former Knick, Carmelo Anthony. So, Chicago Bulls rookie Matas Buzelis was on the Deep 3 podcast, and he talked about who he thought, in his opinion, was the greatest scorer of all time. Surprisingly enough, he mentioned Carmelo Anthony. Usually players his age, that young, they usually say LeBron James. They usually say Kobe Bryant. And if they're a big basketball buff, they're probably going to say Michael Jordan as well. But Carmelo Anthony, in my opinion, he just doesn't get the respect that he deserves as far as being one of the best players to put the ball in the bucket. Now, time and time again, I've come on this platform and talked about Carmelo Anthony and how a little bit of a disappointment he was to me when he had his time with the Knicks. I actually wanted Carmelo Anthony to evolve his game. I wanted him to add more things to his game than just putting the ball in the bucket. But if we're strictly talking about just offensive prowess, if we're strictly talking about just putting the ball in the bucket, Carmelo Anthony is in the conversation for me personally. Personally, just me. Carmelo Anthony is in the conversation, the top 5 offensive players of all time. Carmelo Anthony, what he was able to do in isolation, what he was able to do in the post-up, adding the three-pointer to his game. You see players time and time again in all these interviews, they say that Carmelo Anthony, what he liked to do the most was just bully you, and he was strong enough to do it. And Carmelo Anthony's mindset of just always attacking, never giving up. Like, Carmelo Anthony is super and sorely disrespected whenever these conversations come up. So Carmelo Anthony's game, a lot of NBA analysts, a lot of just hoopers on the internet, they talk about a 3-level score, where in reality, there's a lot more than 3 levels. There's even more than 5 levels. Me personally, I always look to see if the player has a 5-level type of game. And the 5 levels, of course, you got around the rim, you got mid-range, you got three-pointer. But the 2 levels that people don't often talk about, you got isolation and you got free throws. But in all honesty, there's more than 5 levels. But just me personally, those are the 5 levels that I look at whenever I look at a player with my own 2 eyes. And Carmelo Anthony, man, he had all 5. The mid-range, he had that, especially with the jab step. I've seen highlights of Carmelo Anthony when he uses the jab step. The defender is out of the frame. Just with the jab step, Carmelo Anthony didn't even put the ball on the floor. He simply just used his jab step, and the defender is out of the picture. So Carmelo Anthony has the mid-range. Like I said earlier, Carmelo Anthony added the three-point to his game. Now we're talking about free throws. Carmelo Anthony was super aggressive, getting to the line, so he had the free throws. Carmelo Anthony loved isolation on time and time again with the Denver Nuggets. And of course, when he came with the Knicks, he put the ball in Melo's hands when he was in post-up and isolation on the wing and let Carmelo do his thing. Face up, ISO, do the jab step, and he either pull up or he just drive around his man and put the ball in the bucket. But then, after seeing that clip, then it got me to think, okay, if Carmelo Anthony is, in my opinion, top 5 putting the ball in the bucket, who's in the 5 of all time? So Melo, I don't know exactly where he ranks 1 through 5. If I'm gonna break it down as far as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Melo might be top 3 for me. But the other players that I'm gonna have in that conversation, of course, you gotta have Kobe Bryant, of course, you gotta have MJ, of course, that's 3. LeBron James is always an interesting one because LeBron James, in my opinion, he's not a scorer. You don't go to him to score the ball. Like, he's obviously able to do that. That's one part of his game that he's able to do, and he's able to master it because, of course, he's the all-time leading scorer. But if you're a real basketball fan and if you really watch the game, LeBron's best asset is getting his teammates involved. Look at what he did with that Cleveland Cavaliers team in 2007, leading them to the NBA Finals. Because LeBron James had Eric Snow, he has Jonas Sagauskas, he had Anderson Varejao, he had Drew Gooden, he had Daniel Marshall, he had Boobie Gibson on his team, leading them past the Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. Of course, they ended up getting swept by the San Antonio Spurs. But the fact that LeBron was able to get that team to the NBA Finals, that is something that is not talked about enough. So LeBron James being labeled as a scorer, I think is actually belittling his career. LeBron James is so much more than a scorer. He's able to score at a high level, but I wouldn't necessarily label him as a scorer. So LeBron James might have an asterisk, but then you talk about some of these players that you kind of maybe forgotten. You're talking about Vince Carter. You're talking about Joyce McGrady. You're talking about Allen Iverson. Of course, Kevin Durant is in that conversation. Kevin Durant is in the top 5 for me, no question. So I got 4 in no particular order. I got Melo, KD, MJ, Kobe. That's 4. The 5th, I don't know. I can't really think of anybody right now. But let me tell you something, man. As I'm thinking about this, SGA, man. SGA, the way he's able to get to his spots, the way he's able to get his points. And SGA, man, I gotta watch more highlights of him because I haven't seen enough. But from what I've seen, he's kind of perfected his game. Like, he knows his spots. He knows what moves to pull out in order to get to his spot. And on top of that, his height, being 6'5", 6'6" at a point guard, like, he's at a huge advantage. But going back to Melo, man, I just think Melo is sorely disrespected. And of course, me personally, being a New York Knicks fan, I was a little disappointed with Melo's tenure with the Knicks. Now, you can put half of the blame on him, but then the other half, you got to put on Phil Jackson because of what he did with the team as soon as he became general manager. That was a nightmare. But Melo, man, when he came to the Knicks, I was expecting the Knicks to do big things, and I was expecting Carmelo Anthony to actually evolve and add things to his game, but that's just not the type of player he was. He knew what he was good at, and he kept to it. And, you know, the way his career ended, you could kind of say it was on his shoulders because he didn't really try to add anything to his game, because he was only looked at as a one-dimensional player. He didn't do anything to add to his game. He didn't do anything to interrupt that conversation, to interrupt that narrative. So some of it you got to put on his shoulders. But I just want to come on here and give Carmelo Anthony his flowers, because whenever we talk about scores, of course, being an overall NBA player, Carmelo Anthony doesn't really deserve to be in that conversation. But if we're talking about one aspect of the game, and if we're talking about scoring, Carmelo Anthony needs to be in the conversation every single time, especially within the more recent times. And within the more recent times, whenever people bring up that conversation, you got the LeBrons, you got the Kobe's, you got the KD's, but Melo just never brought up, which is crazy to me, an absolute blasphemy. But if you're watching this and if you're part of the younger generation, definitely do your Googles on Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony, there are a bunch of YouTube videos out there just showing Carmelo Anthony's offensive moves, the jab step, off the dribble, three-pointer, mid-range, the post-up. Do your Googles on Carmelo Anthony and learn from his game. But until next time, guys, I want to say thank you so much for checking it out. Leave it in the comments. Let me know what you guys thought about Bleacher Report's article. Also, let me know what you guys thought about my take about Carmelo Anthony being top 5 offensive scorers of all time. But until next time, you guys know the drill. You guys know the vibes. Jalen Brunson for MVP wherever you are. The Deuce is Deuce McBride for co-MVP. Mikal Bridges for the 2024-2025 Defensive Player of the Year. Taj Gibson for President. I almost forgot about you, bro. But until next time, I'll check you out in the next video. Peace.